Let's get some analysis of international affairs right now, as we do every week, with Greg Sheridan, foreign editor at The Australian. Greg, first of all, a lot happening in our region. China, ambitious sort of ambit claim almost across 10 countries. They've shelved that now. What do you make of where we sit in the early days of the Albanese government on that front?
Well, Kieran, that was a rare diplomatic defeat for Beijing. Good work from Albanese and Penny Wong. You know, I tell you what, when things go wrong, they're certainly going to cop the blame for it. So, you know, Penny Wong getting there and lobbying against the deal very quickly, that was a good thing. The multilateral deal is not quite as significant as it might seem. China has these in lots of regions of the world, Europe, Africa, all Eastern Europe, Central Europe, all sorts of places. The more dangerous deal for us is the bilateral deal, like the one that it did with Solomon Islands. That's where a military base will come from. A bilateral deal, a creeping Chinese presence, a sort of a grey zone strategy where they're not obviously the Navy to start with. And, you know, Beijing has shown such enormous strategic commitment to the South Pacific. As far as I know, no American Secretary of State has ever done a tour of the South Pacific comparable with that being done by Wang Yi. That, you know, I put it in our paper today, this is at least a 15-round bout, and this is just the first round, and Australia's won the first round on points. That's great, but don't think Beijing is going away.
The next element of that, I guess, is to, and this goes to the language that Antony Blinken, the US Secretary of State, used in his lengthy speech at George Washington University last week, where he spoke about the need to align with other countries, like-minded countries in this region. The Prime Minister heading off to Jakarta this weekend as an effort to try and build relations with that very important country to our north.
Yeah, that's a very good decision by the Prime Minister to make that. This would in effect have been his first trip, but he was quite right to go to the Quad. But this is his first scheduled trip. And he would have had Papua New Guinea in this trip. He would have been the first Prime Minister since Bob Hawke to put PNG in his first overseas trip. But PNG is having its election. The American position is a bit weaker in the region than it seems, which makes the Australian effort all the more important. And that's because you see in this Indo-Pacific economic framework that the Biden administration put out last week, it's incredibly anemic and ineffective, and it really cuts no mustard at all in the region. And America is missing economically from the region. Now, I think Australian diplomacy the last year or so has been obsessed with AUKUS and the Quad and so on. They're all good things, that's important. But I think we have neglected Southeast Asia a bit, and Southeast Asia is showing almost no interest in us at the moment. It's very good for Prime Minister Albanese. Indonesia is very internally focused right now, but they're a critical swing state. They're not as important as India, but they're a critical swing state. And of course, they're our most powerful, neighbour. So it's absolutely right for Albanese to go there. He's been there before, of course, but this is his first time as Prime Minister. And it pays a little tribute to Indonesia to make them traditionally our first trip. They have themselves a pretty troubled relationship with China, but they're not remotely immune to the vast amounts of Chinese money that's sloshed through their economy.
Greg, we've only got a minute left, but you touched on the India relationship. The PM did meet with Narendra Modi on day one. We shouldn't forget that, because we talk about Biden a fair bit, Modi almost as important to some extent within the region. He's a critical figure that we need to start strengthening that relationship. Perennially underdone, really, our ties with India. Do you think there are prospects for growth there in the next year or two?
There certainly are. We lack a really big business champion in India, and we've lacked political champions. I mean, Tony Abbott was a very strong champion of the India relationship, as John Howard was at the end. We haven't had a champion of the India relationship. The Indian diaspora in Australia is growing bigger and bigger and bigger. Peter Varghese, in his landmark report, forecast that the Indians would be the most prominent ethnic minority in our politics since the Irish. And India, even more than Indonesia, is the critical swing state of our region, the natural balancer to China. It punishes the impatient, but we need to put an immense amount of work into every element of the relationship, and particularly the security relationship within the Quad.
Yep, does make a lot of sense, Greg. Thank you. Greg Sheridan, as always, appreciate it. Talk to you next week.
Thanks, Kieran.